But along those lines of his conversation about family names, you really understand the genesis of the names and our what do you call it, stubborn persistence to hang on to a name that really probably most likely has only been in our families for a very short period of time. Okay, they're not easily identifiable that way. That wasn't necessarily the name used by the family. I've done detailed studies, in particular about the village of Kurkjian, where we have detailed family trees of every household in that family, and I've compared it to the Ottoman censuses. And the family names aren't the same as what was handed down in 1950. Some are, some aren't. So it's just it's a way of, I guess, not being so rigid about our perceptions of that regard, about the spellings, which in any regard, how you transliterate can be done multiple ways beyond just the fact that the names are different. And I hope that's a really important message that came out of Luc's talk about names and being open to that. So I will invite, we do have at least one question.
Hi, my name is Kurkjian. Thank you so much for a wonderful talk. My area is actually history of the Balkans. And I happen to be born in Bulgaria, so I might have some connections for you. But what I wanted to say to this body, and since it seems to me that everyone comes here asking questions and looking for answers, and there's so many people eager to help out, it might be great if somehow some of you could figure out a way to have one place where either the call goes out for this is what we need for assistance, or what I was going to ask directly to you as pertaining to your talk, and I'm so glad you ended on the Soviet Armenians, is there anyone doing research on that area? Because I actually happened to find my relatives in the Bulgarian archives basically because I was on another totally different project, and the archivists knew me so well, they were kind enough to look it up on the computer, but it's all on microfiche, right? So if it were possible to put a list of, who is working on what now, or some site, I mean, I understand we have a site for Armenian studies and other academic organizations, but maybe for genealogical research, if we could, because I'm totally new to it. I may be an academic, but not a genealogist, so that's...
Yeah, well, I think the Facebook group is the first place to start, and it's growing, and it grew a lot already, but new people coming with new ideas, and this is definitely something that could be put there, who has access to Bulgarian records, and what does this person know is out there. In fact, there is a file section on the Facebook group with the different things that we did find, but it's ever growing. So, recently I found, a friend of mine sent me the alumni list for the American University of Beirut, and I posted it on a Facebook group, and immediately a bunch of people said, hey, I found grandpa's in there, my grandpa's in there, and there were a bunch of people who immediately, looked inside and found relatives. So please join, and please share your knowledge of what you know about the Bulgarian records, and that would be awesome. Yeah, that is the best place currently where there's, Marcus.
It is. Yeah, within the group, but yeah, look, I would just say, I think Tracy's probably taking notes because this is a wonderful file to add to the files, is what people are working on. Yeah, so I think that'll be added. And the file section is very easy, there's not as to go through, so you don't have to, but even the conversations are searchable, so you can search for village, or, so that even that is searchable. In the way of the Soviet records, not necessarily under countries that were formerly part of the Soviet Union, but like Armenia proper, which was part of the Soviet Union. Interestingly, Family Search and Mormon Church not only microfilm those, but they've started to post the digitized versions of those online. So you actually can find the images of the churches for the Yerevan area online today that go back into the 1800s. So I know some of the people here trace their roots to Yerevan, and even the Caucasus in general, to Tbilisi, Artsakh, things like that, I don't know, but I know in Yerevan that there are records available. There are census records, Russian census records. I've seen published sources, books, but not the actual records themselves I haven't worked with. But my suspicion is there's an 1899 census, I believe, for the Caucasus that would lead to a lot of information as well. So these are the things, like you say, that are still left to do. And there's a lot. It's never ending. So great ideas, and I think that's going to be taken to heart. Thanks.
And the Bulgarian Archives website is linked in the file section.
Oh, yeah.
So you know, it's so complete. It's not very good stuff.
Hi, my name is Dimitra. I'm a writer and journalist. I'm from New York now via Chicago via New York. And I always identify as being Greek, and I'm Greek. Two of my grandparents are from Asia Minor, which is a source of great pride. And as I make a documentary about our family, I've come to the realization that I really don't know if one of my grandfathers was Greek. He very well could have been Armenian, but you brought up the point that I struggle with. We don't really know what his last name was. The name that we had was a Greek word that he came up with when he came to this country. Why he came up with it, I don't know. In trying to do a little research here, I've come across towns near where he was from, but there were Armenians in the towns near where we were, but there's really not a lot written about these towns because they were in Western Anatolia. Bilajik, Bursa. We know there were a lot of Turks in these, we know that there are plenty of Turks in this area. There are many Armenians in these areas. So my question to you is, what are the chances that we can go back to property records in Turkey to find our ancestors' property names? You know, I've met the patriarch as a journalist. I have great power, and yet even I have not been able to get Greek records about Greek names in Asia Minor. So anything you can enlighten us all on about family names, because so many of us have our names, but how many more of us do not?
Yeah, I think George can talk a lot about the records. It's very difficult because they're protected for various reasons, for political reasons on the part of Turkey. Also, people are worried, I think, that if too many people go through them, they'll get deteriorated. They're not in a position to have them all digitized like we do here. But George can talk more about this. What I want to say also is one way to go around this is DNA testing. And like I said, I have a good friend. He finally convinced him to get someone in his family tested, and a bunch of high Horons, Greek Armenians, Greek, religiously Greek, linguistically Armenian people popped up in his family tree all of a sudden. So, DNA testing is one way. George can talk more about the record access in Turkey.
Yeah, so that's actually a good question on a number of points that I want to remember to mention, so I'm going to do it now because I don't want to forget. We do have the workshop starting at 3 o'clock with volunteers that are here to help you, wherever you are, take your research farther, whether it's beginning or end. But at the same time, I want to set realistic expectations. Some people will find things out they never knew. Some people will be able to go much further than they ever expected to. But there are some situations that are just unresolvable, okay? And so I want you to understand. I hope that everybody here will walk away learning something about their family that they didn't know already, or at the very least that they've learned something in general about our Armenian ancestry that you didn't know before. But at the same time, things like orphans that didn't even know their parents, who they were. The only resolution is going to be the next talk that comes up, I think, is going to talk to some of these points that we're going to get to. In the way of records in Turkey, the sources we're talking about now are primarily census records that are from the 1830s to 1850s, maybe, okay, where it's actually detailed at the household level, the male names of the villages. And I've compiled almost 180 of the registered books of different places that Armenians lived, okay, and go into the Ottoman archives to get them. The problem is that time period is before the consciousness of most Armenians in their way of their family history. So it's of limited use, which is why I didn't talk about it today, why I'm only mentioning it in passing at this point, because most Armenians can't take advantage of that. But they do exist, and there are times where, and there are people here that I've been able to find their family, and those records, my own included. Ani, I found her family, Chemeskezik, in the records. Parchanj, of course, I'm doing a very detailed study on. The way of, but there's something else I want to mention in that regard, and that's the work being done by the Hunan Dink Foundation. There are some property records and information about properties that were owned by the minorities, and they're doing an extensive study across the entire country on this. They've published, their first book has been published, it's on Kayseri Gesaria, and I do have a copy with me that you can see. If, they can't sell them because it was a European Union project, but if somebody makes a donation, I'm sure they can send them a copy of the book. I'd have to look at it, I forget if it's bilingual or trilingual, but English is one of the languages that the book is printed in. And so this work that they're doing, which they're getting, the sources are records that are at the Patriarchate, as well as in the Ottoman archives, as well as some other places where they document different property owned by the community, per se. Where this can go, I don't know, but the records that are more current, there's a 1905-7 census that was taken that's more in line with our consciousness. More Armenians would gain use from that, and we've been blocked from gaining, not we, but everybody. From what I understand, it's already been transcribed into modern Turkish even, from the Ottoman Turkish. But nonetheless, I have requested access and been refused, and everybody else that's requested access has been refused. So if you think about it, when you compare the United States, where we can get a census record from 1940, in Turkey I can only get 1840, 100 years earlier. It's really unbelievable that we're blocked from records that are even over 100 years old. But this is what needs to be done. If at some point those records become available, it will open up many possibilities for genealogists to make use of, but at this point they're not available. I hope that answers the question.
Also, I said this earlier, but obviously I believe you mentioned Bursa was the town or near Bursa. So if you can find the Bursa, which I might have, if there is one, I don't know them all by heart, but if there is one, look if it has a list, a diaspora list, and at least try to find that name in there. I mean, that would be a first step. And if it ever gets translated, look through it, and if it ever gets indexed, look through the index for the name you're looking for. That's obviously another way to go about it.
Sorry, I just wanted to add specifically to that question, and this will help other people too. There are other Facebook groups about other countries. I am a member of the Hellenic Genealogy group specifically because of Armenians who were either living in Greece or like Smyrna, places in Western Anatolia. And those people, there are people living in Greece who can go to the Greek archives for you. They will go to the Greek church archives, and this connects exactly with what he was saying. There are Armenians who are going to the Greek churches. Okay, so if you join the Hellenic Genealogy group, someone in that group can go to the church archives in Greece, and they have some of the records from the Greek churches that were in Turkey. Okay, so the Romanian genealogy group, if you have ancestors that went to Romania, that went to the Ukraine, you can join those genealogy groups on Facebook, and the people there are just like the people in our group. They're willing to help, and they're willing to go and look up records for you.
No, yeah. Okay. Well, those the oral histories. That's part of the
Not just oral history.
yeah, but that's part of that collection, right?
Yes, but they're not all digitized. They're getting there. The university wanted it, now they're going to start with the editions.
How many of the oral histories do they have?
350-ish,
Okay.
and then 30,000 books, plus tons of periodical journals from over 100 years ago. Like, it's all in one book, but the
And you-
Armenian Research Center at UW Dearborn.
Are you guys sharing with the Cal Woodsfield? You're not
No,
going to share?
ours are separate.
You're going to just do your own?
Yeah, ours are separate.
So the oral histories that were mentioned that were at the University of Michigan is an Armenian research center housed there that not only has the oral histories but has a large collection. Actually, a lot of the books in that collection were donated by somebody from this area, for Weekend Emmanuelian. His collection, I think, ended up there. And I know they're funded partly, or at least have been funded by the Knights of Watertown as well, in setting up that collection. So as you think about the resources that are available, it's not only the ones that are here locally, but the ones that are around the country, because these oral histories, unfortunately, and I have to say this, unfortunately, there's no one central location where all the oral histories that were taken in the 70s and 80s or 90s are housed. So there's a collection at the Zorian Institute. There's a collection at UCLA. There's a collection at Michigan. There's even a collection, I think, partially at the Armenian Museum here as well. And they're all separately. They haven't all been digitized. I really commend Michigan, though, for digitizing and making them available, because as far as I know, they're the only ones that have done that thus far. So but those are all really important resources for genealogists. So thank you for bringing that up. The next speakers is it's a topic that I think a lot of you are here for and are interested in, and myself included have benefited from this aspect of genealogy that was never available or hadn't been available until recently, and it grows in its importance the more people actually become tested for their DNA tested, allow their DNA to be tested. As it was mentioned, we do have a number of kits here available on DNA, but Janet and Steve are going to talk about a particular case as well as give you some information about what the testing actually entails. And I urge you to really pay attention to this. She's going to tell one example of a story, but I think there are many stories like this available, not just the orphan stories, but of those like myself that were able to find family in Turkey that my family never even knew about, but was as closely related as saying that it was my great-grandmother that had a sister that was taken during the genocide that my parents didn't know about, and her son was tested, and we matched, and through DNA we were able to reconnect as a family. And I think that story should resonate with a lot of people, because those are the ones that we don't know about, we've forgotten about, or in fact, they consider themselves dead to us, and they wanted us to consider them dead as well. And these stories are so sad, but today, people like that are thirsting to remake that connection with their Armenian roots. Whether they're in Turkey or elsewhere, they're thirsting for that, and I think that it's such an important component. So I invite Janet, who's done so much on Everday, but also other aspects of Armenian genealogy. She really gives her time without ever questioning, and I applaud all the effort she's done. It's truly amazing. And of course, Steve Kurkjian, reporter for the Boston Globe, who I think the community knows well, and we're so lucky to have had in our community really as a vanguard and a watchdog for our community, and I really appreciate that. So without further ado, I invite them both up.
Thank you. This is all Janet's achievement. She called me last summer. I was sitting on my beach reading the Boston Globe sports section, and she said, "Steve, I have a story that you have to write." And it's a story about June Holden. And let me read you as June Holden described the story. As only a handful of my family know, my entire life, I have wanted to find out who was my biological father. A burning question in my head that I thought would never be answered, especially at this point in my life, turning 70, wondering, wishing, never expecting to find out. This all began as my granddaughter went on 23andMe, which is one of the 3 DNA websites. Once I knew the interest, I did the DNA testing, never believing in a million years I would truly find out who that biological father was. Who was I? Where did I come from? Had haunted me an uncomfortable and incomplete feeling, a big void. And this would have died in me no one ever known had it not been for Janet Kurkjian, Andreopoulos. Her passion and knowledge of wanting to engage into this 23andMe ancestry field, I still would not have known. A remarkable woman who cared. A wish soon to have been granted. Janet tugged on my heart. I am forever grateful to Janet and to have learned about my Armenian heritage. Plus, I have an extended Armenian family now. A family tree can be completed at peace now knowing I'm me. My very own family, history, and heritage. And this is June's story as learned and revealed and cherished by Janet Kurkjian. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that introduction. Can everyone hear me? Can I see a hand, show of hands? How many people in this room have taken the DNA test? That's pretty good. What would you say? 40%? Okay. If you ate your lunch, you had a drink, stop drinking now, don't eat anything else, don't chew gum. If you wait a half an hour, you can take a DNA test, which will be available here today for discounted prices, they told you earlier. So I encourage you to hold off. Again, thank you for the kind introduction. And let me steal a little bit from Luc this time. He mentioned that his Armenian teacher had told them to find out their ancestral villages. My Armenian teacher did the same. I was born and raised in Detroit, but unlike him, I remember his last name. He was Kurkjian, and he instilled this place of seed in me to learn more about my ancestors. And fast forward, I moved to Arizona, had children, and I wanted to leave them a legacy. So I researched as many people as I could find all over the world to incorporate into my family tree of ACEC and beyond. And so I do have a database here of maybe 28,000 people who either married into someone who was ACEC or, for whatever point of interest, maybe I included them in the tree. It's not available online. I like to keep it private, and I share with people the portions of the tree that pertain to them. Anyway, as Stephen had mentioned, DNA testing was introduced to me a few years ago. I am super excited about it. It's added a whole new level of inquiry and intrigue, and it's another tool for genealogists. It really is, and it's not to be underestimated. And for people that say, I don't want to take the test, I'm not going to get any matches. No, that's not true. You will have DNA matches. And this is a June Holden story, a woman who had also taken a DNA test hoping to find her relatives. How did I find her biological father? She had taken the DNA test already. I didn't ask her to do that. I didn't know her. She told me some information about herself. I performed some genealogical research. I made some theories as to who could her father be. And ultimately, we tested several people to confirm who her father was. These are a short list of some of her DNA matches. So let's see if I can see this. Oh, turn it off. Here.